everyone, welcome back to episode 9 of Quarantine Cuisine. I'm your host Michael. Well, today's a special day, and it's a special meal as well. Today's the 26th birthday of our youngest son, Kevin. And as we like to do in our family, when it's somebody's birthday, we always ask what their favorite dish is or what they'd like to eat. So Kevin's request tonight is for some beautiful barbecue baby back ribs. So we're gonna do these really great way, actually. Learned this from our eldest son, Stephanie. We have a great way of doing it in the oven. They become really, really tender. We're gonna finish them on the grill after. And to complement the ribs, we're gonna do some baked beans. We're gonna add some molasses, a little bit of smoke to it, and a little bit of bacon in it as well, just to have a nice complement, almost like a starchy side to it. Do a classic corn on the cob. I'm gonna put it on the grill, char it with a little bit of butter and some cumin, and then we're gonna do a slaw, like an apple cabbage slaw, to finish off the meal. So that's it. Normally we would have a full family here to celebrate our birthdays, but because we're under lock and key with the COVID-19 virus, it's just our small family gathering. And later tonight, we're going to jump on a FaceTime shared bit to raise a glass to Kevin with his brothers and their significant others, and as well just to be able to say happy birthday to him. But it'll be done virtually with quite a distance between us. So anyways, that's the meal for tonight. Let's start cooking. The first thing we're going to do is prepare our dry rub for the ribs. Now there's as many recipes for rubs as I think there are barbecue joints around the world. So I like to experiment from time to time, but I've got kind of my general kind of 10 spice mix that I'm gonna walk you through in terms of portions and everything else. So the first thing I'm going to add is 2.5 tablespoons of paprika. This is just straightforward Hungarian paprika. You can use smoked paprika if you like to as well. And then to that, I'm gonna add 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. Then after that, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of onion powder. And to that, after that, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of chili powder. Then we're going to mix in some brown sugar. It's 1/3 cup of brown sugar. So that's all going to get mixed in here as well. And then we're going to put just about 1/8 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. So I'm very careful with this. If somebody likes to spice up the ribs a little more, then they can do that afterwards, but this adds just a little bit of heat. That's why we're only using about 1/8 teaspoon here. And then after that, I'll add a teaspoon of dry mustard, which is gonna give a nice kind of, again, a little more of a sizzle to it as well, like more of a mustardy flavor, I guess would be the proper way to describe it. And then we're gonna put 1/2 teaspoon of ginger powder, and then 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, and then after the last ingredient to go in here is 2 teaspoons of salt. So we have all of our dry rub ingredients all mixed in here. So all I do is I just get everything mixed up really nice. The brown sugar is usually the one that tends to clump up a little bit. It doesn't matter how soft it is, but it tends to have a little more moisture in it. So I'm just gonna get everything nice and mixed up here. And this way we'll be ready to apply the dry rub to the ribs. Okay, so spice rub is done. There's an age-old question of whether you boil ribs, don't boil ribs, put them right on the grill, put them right in the pan or in the oven. I actually think I prefer not to boil ribs at all. I think it actually takes the flavor out of them. But what I do think is a very important thing to do is the first thing is to take this membrane off the back of the rib, because that tends to really toughen it up. So a little technique here I'll walk you through. So I tend to get a small paper towel here, and then what I try to do is I try to find this membrane, just find it under a bone, and then get a paper towel underneath it, and then just pull it across as best you can. Be careful to take the membrane off. So if you can pull that all the way through, if luck has it, you can always get it. You can get it in one go here, which looks like I did a pretty good job. And then I also like to trim just a couple of these pieces off here. It doesn't really add anything to the ribs. They just kind of linger around, so I'm just going to leave that. So we've got a really nice clean rib here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and trim up the other one as well, but our ribs are going to be all ready for the dry rub now. Now that we've got the membrane removed from the racks of ribs and trimmed them up a little bit, now it's time to put the dry rub on. So really important thing, I probably have too much dry rub that I'm going to need for this. I tend to make a little bit extra. But what I want to avoid doing is cross-contaminating. So I don't want to put my hand in the rub and then rub the pork or the meat with it. So I'm going to be very careful to make sure that I apply the rub with my left hand, and I'm going to rub it into the pork with my right hand. So again, just put your hand, just being very generous about the rub mixture. Once this is in the oven, it's actually going to a fair bit of it might even end up in the foil, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. So try to get all sides of it here as well. So we're going to go ahead and turn this over, get the other side of it done. It's not a perfect science here, just make sure it's got a nice little coating on it. That looks pretty good for one rib there. I'm going to get on to the other one now. And as I thought, we've got a lot of rub mixture left over. Okay, so our ribs are all coated, ready to go for the next step before we put in the oven, and that's the wrap. Okay, the next step before we get our ribs in the oven is to wrap these in nice little parcels. So I've already pre-cut some aluminum foil. I'm gonna grab one of our racks here, place it in the middle. I'm gonna place it bone side down. Then what I wanna do is I want to be able to fold these sides over. Actually, I'm gonna fold them this way first. And just fold as best I can this way, bring this part over as well. And then fold this down, just making sure that I'm sealing this as best I can, because that's what's gonna cook the ribs, and they're gonna come out, literally, the bones pull out of the meat after. So just fold this down, fold this down, fold this down, until it's fairly tight against the meat. And then on the sides, same thing, make sure, fold it, roll it up like this. Make sure, again, everything's sealed inside. You don't want to be able to get the bones to be able to pick the meat, or else you're going to lose the benefit of having it sealed up here really nice. Okay, so I've got this one all packed up. I'm going to go ahead and do the other rack as well, and we'll be ready to put this in the oven, 250, 275 for about 3 hours, nice and slow and low, and they're going to cook nicely, and we'll get on to the rest of our prep. Now we're going to start the prep for our coleslaw, and the first thing I like to do is get a mixing bowl and then get our sauce, or our actual dressing, made first. So really 4 simple ingredients to this. We'll season it at the end with salt and pepper. But the ingredients for this are really Dijon or a whole grain mustard. We don't have any whole grain. You can use yellow mustard if you like as well. Again, there's no real rules here. It just depends on what you have available and what you prefer. And then so there's 2 teaspoons of the mustard. Then I have 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. I'm going to drop that in the bottom of the bowl as well. And 2 teaspoons of white wine vinegar. And I'm just going to spend a minute just to get that a little bit mixed up here before we add our 4th ingredient. So just get that whisked up here nice. Okay, and then we've got some brown sugar here. So I have 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. I might go a little bit light on this. We don't want it too sweet, but the purpose of the slaw is to have a nice tangy yet sweet taste to it. Okay, so I think our dressing is all done for our slaw. We don't want to overdress it, we just want to have some light dressing on it to complement the vegetables during it. Okay, now it's time to prep the vegetables. Okay, now we're going to prepare the vegetables for our coleslaw. And it's a very typical coleslaw with one exception, and that's the exception of adding an apple. We're going to add an apple to the slaw because it complements the pork very nicely. So we're going to have an apple here. This is just a Honeycrisp apple. That's the only one we have in the fridge, so that's what we're going to use. Then we have a white onion that we're going to slice up nice and thin. The apple, by the way, will be julienne as best we can. Same with a carrot as well. We're going to julienne this carrot up. And then red bell pepper we're going to slice nice and thin as well. And then of course we're going to have some cabbage. So we just have a regular head of cabbage here. You can use Napa cabbage or whatever other cabbage is available, purple cabbage if you have that. But this is, given the state of things here with the virus, we're just on limited supply of what we can actually choose for vegetables. So, okay, so let's get started on this. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce what I do for a technique for carrots, especially when I julienne, is I use a device called the mandolin. And the mandolin is really something that I use to be able to, I've got 2 blades on this one actually. So you have a horizontal blade that kind of slices things. And then I've got a blade here which really juliennes everything. So the only thing you need to be careful of here, as Dorothy cringes every time I use this, is watch your fingers. So essentially I just slice this down. The carrots are going to fall through the bottom. I haven't said oh once yet, so I think I'm in pretty good shape. So we'll take a good sized carrot here. We're going to julienne this down. Seems to be the easiest way to be able to do this. I mean, if you have a Cuisinart, you can also use a food processor to do a lot of this as well. I just tend to want to prep this manually, especially for this show. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So we've got some julienne carrot here. That's going to go in our bowl first. So I'm just going to move our bowl over here, get it hopefully on camera in a minute. Okay, so the carrot's all in the pot, or in the bowl rather. Then I'm going to slice up our cabbage now. So I remove the outer leaves and I cored the cabbage, which is really important to do. So rather than julienne this, in fact I'm going to take one more leaf off. Rather than trying to julienne this with the mandolin, it's just as easy to get a nice sharp knife and to begin to slice this nice and thin like this. I think we're getting in pretty good shape here. I'm just going to put a quick chop on this, see if I can chop this down a bit into some more bite-sized pieces. Again, it doesn't need to be fancy. We're cooking at home, not in a 3-star Michelin restaurant yet. So we're going to put this as well in our bowl with our carrots. Okay, excellent. Let's get rid of this. Okay. Now the next one is the red bell pepper. So the red bell pepper, again, I showed this technique in a previous episode. I'm only going to use about half the pepper anyways, maybe a little bit less than that. I'm just going to slice down the side of the pepper like this. Remove any of the pulp that I'm not going to need, which will get rid of the seeds as well. And I'm just going to slice this as thin as I possibly can. I'm actually going to cut these in half a little bit. So we're looking for somewhat like nice juliennes of red pepper. Slice that in half. Okay, we're going to toss that in our pot as well. I keep calling it a pot, it's a mixing bowl, but anyways, I think you get the idea. Okay, so that's all good. And then I'm going to slice up some of our onion here. So again, try to keep this as thin as I possibly can. Keep my fingers away from the knife blade, using my fingers as a guide. Probably want about a quarter of a decent sized onion here. So I used just about half of the bell pepper. I used a nice large carrot. I think that's good as well. I'm going to give this a little bit of a chop as well, just to keep it in decent sized pieces. I'm going to toss that back in our bowl as well. And then the last thing I'm going to work on is our apple. So the apple's been washed, I didn't core it. I'm just going to slice it easily along the sides here until I get down to about the mid-size of the core. Come on this way as well. Slice down the apple, staying far away from the core. Same way here. Finally, the last side here. Okay, then what I'll do is I'll take each slice here. You notice I didn't peel the apple, not necessary to do that. Skin it on is good. Actually, skin's quite nutritious for you. So I'm making these little matchsticks, or these little juliennes of the apple as well. Okay, so we have the apple julienne here as well, so we're going to put that in our mixing bowl as well. So we have one carrot that's been julienned. We have the apple that's been cut up in matchsticks. We have half a red bell pepper that's been sliced up very thinly as well. We have 2 cups of cabbage and about a quarter of a fairly large onion. So now all of our vegetables are prepped, and then we'll just add the dressing in later, season it towards the end, and we'll have a beautiful slaw. I may actually season it earlier, put it in the fridge, just let those wonderful flavors all meld together. So there's our prep for our coleslaw, done. Now we're gonna prepare some oven-baked beans. We're cheating a little bit because we're gonna start with some pre-cooked white beans here. We have this in a bowl. Just hold it up there to be able to show you that. And we're going to add 5 ingredients to this and then put it in the oven to roast with the ribs. So the first thing, I've got 2 teaspoons of tomato ketchup. I'm gonna add that inside. Again, I gotta be careful as we mix this up because the beans are cooked. We just don't want to be mashing them up. Then I've got 1 teaspoon of molasses. So this is your grandma's blackstrap molasses. So adds a sweetness and adds a really nice depth to particularly the beans for sure. We thought we'd spice things up just a little bit here. We're gonna put about a half a teaspoon of sriracha in. So we don't want it to be, again, overly hot or spicy, but the sriracha tends to add a nice little dimension to any dish, particularly beans, so it's gonna be really nice. So just gonna stir this around a little bit before we put our last 2 ingredients in. And the last 2 ingredients, we rendered off about 3 slices of bacon. So I just chopped that up in a big chop. I'm gonna toss that in as well. That might be a little bit, oh actually no, what the heck, it's bacon. Everything's better with bacon, so we're gonna throw the bacon inside as well. So we're looking really good here. And the last thing we're gonna add, and I mentioned this on a previous episode, is we tend to smoke some meats throughout the year, and when I do smoke meats, I add some vegetables inside as well. So I've got this pepper. It was a small portobello pepper that I smoked up. We take it out of the smoker, we put them in freezer bags and keep them in the freezer for times like this. So, and this is gonna add a really nice smoke flavor to it. Because we're not smoking the ribs tonight, we're just gonna get them out of the oven. Hopefully we can get them on the grill without falling apart because they're going to be absolutely incredibly tender. I thought just adding a little bit of smoke dimension to at least this particular bean dish is something that we want to do. Okay, so all I'm going to do now is I'm going to place this in an oven-ready dish here. So just dump everything inside here. Again, we don't need to cook this because the beans are already cooked. But I'm going to toss this in the oven alongside the ribs. It's about 250, 275 right now, and we're just going to let this meld nice for about half an hour or so. We're still waiting on our ribs, and that's going to be the beans prepared. Now, we have one more thing we're going to do. We're going to do some beautiful cob corn. And the corn we're going to do on the grill, so I'm not going to do a lot of prep here other than get it on the grill, get it charred nice, and put a mix of melted butter, some garlic powder, and some cumin just to add some flavor to it. So that's the last you'll see of this before we get to the plate. So I think our prep work's all done now. So we're just gonna wait for those ribs to be able to cook. We're gonna get our beans in the oven now to roast very nicely. Wait for the ribs to be done. We're gonna finish them on the grill. So that's it for the prep. Okay, it's time for our wine pairing for the night, but we thought because it's Kevin's birthday, he should pair the wine. So he went down to our stash that we have left here and chose the wine that he thought was good. So in the spirit of social distancing, I'm going to turn this over to our son, Kevin, for his birthday, 26 years, to describe the wine for the dinner tonight. Kevin?
So tonight we have a 2013 Merlot from Two Sisters Vineyards in the Niagara region. So this wine is a full-bodied wine, which has flavors of black cherry, chocolate, and vanilla. And the reason I chose this is because the full bodiness of the wine will stand up to the spiciness of the meal, which we'll have tonight. So Merlot as a varietal kind of has a bad rap because of the movie Sideways.
Aye, aye, Captain, you got it.
And if they want to drink Merlot, we're drinking Merlot.
No, if anybody orders Merlot, I'm leaving. I am not drinking any fucking Merlot!
Okay.
But in fact, Merlot is used in some of the most prized wines in the world, such as wines in the left bank and right bank Bordeaux. For example, Chateau Petrus or Chateau Lafite Rothschild. We're really looking forward to tasting this wine tonight with the food. Thanks.
Okay, food's all ready. We took the ribs to finish off the grill as well as the corn. The beans just came out of the oven and the coleslaw has been in the fridge. Just getting the spices all mixed up, which is really nice. So the first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna serve Kevin's plate first. It's his birthday, so we're gonna serve up a nice rack of ribs here. So we got this one piece here. We're gonna follow it up with a very nice second piece of ribs right there. And then we're gonna put 2 pieces of corn. This is like one whole cob of corn that was nicely charred on the grill with some butter and cumin. A little bit of salt and pepper will finish at the end. And then we're gonna put a nice helping of beans. The beans were made with some tomato ketchup, a little bit of sriracha, some molasses, as well as some crisped up bacon that we put in there as well. So put a nice little helping of beans on top of there. And then finally, just to crisp everything up and make it fresh, we have this apple coleslaw that we made earlier. It's sitting in the fridge. Got a beautiful, beautiful dressing of white wine vinegar, some sliced peppers, some cabbage, some apple in there as well, and then just finish it off with a little bit of mustard and all other vinegar as well. So anyways, there's our meal for tonight. It's Kevin's 26th birthday meal, and we're ready to eat. We're all hungry.